in real time. We've got breaking news. San Francisco Unified has just announced it will no longer require masks in some schools come March 12th, but other schools will still have to mask up a little longer. We'll get details from ABC7 special correspondent Alok Patel and answer your questions about masks, the new White House plan, and more. Also, tax day is right around the corner. All day today, 7 on Your Side will be helping you out with your tax questions this year. Michael Finney will join us with a live conversation with an expert. But first, the battle over Berkeley. After UC Berkeley lost its appeal to the state Supreme Court to have an enrollment cap lifted, it was looking at the prospect of having to send out 5,000 fewer acceptances in order to enroll 3,000 fewer students this fall. Applicants waiting for their admissions decisions were worried that their chances of being admitted to one of the top public universities in the world just dropped. Well, we've just learned the university has found ways to save as many undergraduate slots as possible and does not actually have to slash enrollment by 3,000 in order to comply with the court order. Today, we got details from UC Berkeley's Assistant Vice Chancellor for Communications and Public Affairs, Dan Mogiloff. Dan, thanks for joining us today. Today, we're not going to focus on the pros and cons of the lawsuit, the decision, who's right, who's wrong. I just want to get some answers for the over 100,000 applicants who are now wondering what does this mean for them and what UC Berkeley is doing in the wake of the ruling to make room for as many as possible. Does that sound good?
Absolutely.
Okay, so Dan, I think we should clarify there's acceptance and then there's enrollment. Those numbers are not the same because not everyone accepted will enroll. So let's start with this. How many students were you hoping to enroll this fall and how many can you enroll now?
All right, so we should also differentiate between graduates and undergraduates. So let's go right to the bottom line around the numbers that I think will impact and interest people the most. And that is due to a wide range of really amazing mitigation strategies. We are going to be able to offer admission to all of the undergraduates we plan to. That's the good news. The bad news is that about 1,100 of them, about 1,150, will be required to be all online for the fall semester in 2022, after which they can come to campus for in-person, on-campus learning in the spring semester, starting January 2023. And then another 650 undergraduates will be enrolled, but only to begin in January 2023. So in other words, while we'll be able to enroll in one form or another during next academic year, all of the undergraduates we plan to, nearly 2,000 undergraduate students are not going to have the collegiate experience they work so hard for.
So the bulk of the losses come from the graduate student seats. I thought, that surprises me because I thought the graduate decisions had already gone out.
Yeah, so we initially believed the same thing. As it turns out, Berkeley is like a small city. We're 60, 70,000 people, and we have 125 separate graduate programs. It turned out not all of them weighed in, and we discovered that we could in fact reduce enrollment among graduate students by some 400 students. And together with the measures I just mentioned, that will allow us to comply with the court's ruling. Those graduate students will come primarily, perhaps solely, from our College of Engineering, our law school, and our business school. And so, in effect, in terms of enrollment, in one form or another, we've been able to protect new incoming undergraduate students.
So you're trying to prioritize the undergraduates, the freshmen, but let's talk about that. The ones that
before we go on, sorry to interrupt, but not only that, we've also taken extraordinary measures to prioritize California students. 90% of students coming in will be California residents, and that's an increase over what was originally planned in terms of these mitigation measures that we're taking.
So out of state and international together would be less than 10% now?
Right around 10%.
What was it before? I'm trying to gauge how big of a difference.
I don't have that number handy. You
Okay.
guys called me late in the morning.
Right.
There's so much data running around, hard to keep track.
In terms of bringing more students on, offering them enrollment online only for the first semester, do you think that impacts their student experience? Are you certain that you can deliver as good of an education when most of their intro freshman classes are taken online for a semester?
Yeah, look, we have no doubt that we can deliver an excellent education within the context of online learning, but you don't need to ask me. You can ask any student. It's not the same. There's a reason. We're a university that believes in the benefits of residential in-person learning. And it's just tragic that this unprecedented court order is going to stand in the way of us delivering that to thousands of students who work so hard to have that opportunity.
And I understand, too, that you are also going to have some people enroll and become Berkeley students in the spring and not the fall.
That's correct.
Right?
Yeah, they will delay. They will need to delay their enrollment.
Why is it that you can accommodate the addition of some students in the springtime? Do some people leave after the fall?
Good question. We have thousands of students who graduate mid-year every year.
Okay. Also, will there be more taking part? I know you have a lot of robust off-campus study programs, whether it's in the Capitol or overseas. How does this change?
We hope to increase enrollment in those programs by a few hundred students, creating even more space for incoming freshmen and transfer students.
Okay. Look, will you still need to maintain a bigger wait list now that you've figured out places where you can, you know, kind of save some spots? Is that still necessary? Because I think all the talk on Reddit and College Confidential is that it's going to be a bloodbath of rejections and a huge wait list.
So again, because of these mitigation strategies, there are not going to be more rejections for incoming undergraduates, whether they're transfer students or freshmen. We've been able to mitigate that. As far as the waiting list goes, we're most definitely going to keep a longer waiting list because there is still some hope that there will be a legislative remedy in the weeks ahead that will allow us to move ahead and to provide these thousands of students with the exact sort of collegiate experience they work so hard to get. So we want to keep that option open and not close that door before we have to.
What is the deadline for any type of legislative help that, you know, based on your enrollment calendar?
Yeah, that's really hard to say. It really depends on the nature of the legislative fix. I wish I could give you something exact, but I hope that's going to become a little clearer in the days ahead. Right now, that's uncertain.
Do you know what type of state legislative action might be on the table?
You know, I can only speak generically. Some are looking at what could be, you know, revising the underlying law, the California Environmental Quality Act. And then there are a number of other possible technical changes or short-term or highly focused or temporary changes. Suffice to say, it's a confusing array of options, but what's important to take away is that work on that front has not ceased, and we continue to be in active conversation with our partners in Sacramento.
All right, so will your admissions team be sending out their letters, if you will, digitally these days? It's a portal update, not a letter. Will they be doing that later this year? Is that being pushed back? Or
Same time.
And when is
that? No, same time, because we know, look, we're not operating in isolation. UC Berkeley is sending out its letters at the same time that other universities are, and we want to make sure that students who've applied to UC Berkeley know what their options are before they make one of the most important decisions in their young lives.
Will this decision only impact this year's graduating seniors, or do you think the spillover effect, if there is any, will affect current juniors, current sophomores, long-term?
Well, certainly, look, if this stands, and it's likely to, again, unless there's legislative remedy, the financial consequences of what's happening are calamitous, and probably at least to the tune of $57 million. The shortage of that kind of money is definitely going to have an impact on the university's ability to support and to provide our students with the experience that they expect, want, need, and deserve. But again, there too, we're working in uncharted territory, can't exactly delineate the impacts, but we know we're going to face some really serious challenges due to the financial impacts of the court's decision.
I'm going to let you go. My final question is, what would you like to tell students who have been a nervous wreck for the past few weeks and are a little more panicked since yesterday? What would you like to tell them?
Yeah, I would say to those new incoming undergraduates, whether you're freshmen or transfer students, we have pulled out all the stops to be able to offer one form of enrollment or another to you for next year. Unfortunately, it may not be the one that you hope for. Fortunately, it's going to apply to only a small portion of our incoming class, about 1,800 out of an incoming class of some 9,000. But it's unfortunate, and we're going to work like heck to make sure that the experience you have at UC Berkeley is the best it can possibly be. And we're also going to work like heck to make sure that the impacts of this unfortunate court decision are short-lived and minimal.
And that was UC Berkeley spokesman Dan Mogulof with that conversation today. We'll continue to follow this story about the impact on Berkeley's enrollment. Coming up, ABC7 special correspondent Dr. Alok Patel will be joining us to talk about that breaking news we just told you about. San Francisco Unified dropping their indoor mask mandate at some schools. We'll be back. All right, everybody, thank you for joining us. I am told that Dr. Patel is actually with us already, so we can squeeze in some of your questions, perhaps, before we jump into our convo. Dr. Patel, hello, hello.
Hey, how are you? Happy Friday.
Happy Friday to you, too. We have some viewers here with us, no doubt lining up their questions. Hey, you don't have like a lemon pin or like a, I don't know, panda, or, you just got the circle 7.
We're trying to be professional today, but maybe the 7 can represent like lucky number 7. I don't know. It doesn't have to be. It can be. We can interpret this any way we want to. We can be artistic.
I feel like we need some luck. Okay. Hey. So big news today, which we'll get into in a little bit. San Francisco Unified, but also I think. Didn't I read New York also said that schools can drop their masks, and then LA. That's the big one. LA. Which have been really cautious and slower to move. They announced the indoor mask mandate is dropped, right?
Absolutely. I think those are 3 locations that have announced this, but this is following suit of a lot of other states that are slowly moving, including Oregon, including Washington. New York went as far as saying that they were going to remove the vaccine mandate for a lot of indoor businesses as well. And, at least in New York, that they're citing that hopefully this will kind of improve local businesses and traffic with people going back out. And the evidence for this is the high vaccination, low transmission rate. But it does feel like a very large leap forward compared to what we were talking about just a few weeks ago.
Yeah, it does. It's interesting because we've always talked about I don't know if it was the Swiss cheese metaphor where you have different layers and, each layer has some holes. And then if you have enough layers and there are no holes, it does feel like many layers are being taken away all at once, as opposed to kind of the one at a time approach.
At least when it comes to the mandates. And so, we should remind people that the layers aren't being removed at all when it comes to recommendations.
Oh, sorry. Pause. Got to get on TV. All right, let's do this.
Pause.
All right, breaking news. San Francisco Unified has just reached an agreement with its teachers union and announced starting March 12th, after the state school mask mandate expires, it will no longer require masks at middle schools and high schools. And come April 2nd, masking will be strongly recommended at all schools, including for the youngest kids from transitional kindergarten on up. So joining us to talk about the latest COVID headlines is ABC7 special correspondent Dr. Alok Patel. Dr. Patel, good to see you. Now, as you know, San Francisco had been one of the few districts in the state that indicated it may not drop the mask mandate the minute the state mandate expired. Now it's taking this sort of stepping stone approach. Does that make sense to you, to unmask the middle and high schoolers first?
Kristen, in theory, it might make sense to me in that if we're going to slowly peel back masks, we just want to make sure that we're keeping those who are most vulnerable protected the longest. But in terms of saying, and I read this just now in the press release, saying that this is going to give parents more time to go out and get vaccinated. Well, there's two sides to that. Parents of kids age 5 to 11 who have not yet gotten their kids vaccinated, who may be vaccine hesitant, hopefully this pushes them to go and get those kids vaccinated, or at least ask those important questions now that they know that the mask mandates are being lifted. And parents under the age of 5 who might be going to daycare or might be entering preschool, this may not affect them at all because we know that vaccines aren't going to be available. And so in that sense, it may make sense, but I don't know if it's going to make a huge cardinal difference in the vaccine rates in waiting for those younger kids.
Okay. Hey, what is the latest with regard to vaccine availability for the youngest kids?
Well, the latest is that we're still waiting for that data. And I presume you're talking about kids age 5 and under, and we're still waiting to see that trial data come out after all the roller coaster we went through over the past month. And I don't anticipate that we're going to get a clear signal about what direction we're going to go in until at least April. I haven't heard any breaking news there, but Kristen, earlier this week, the news that was kind of going around headlines was the early preprint study showing lower vaccine efficacy against all infections in those kids age 5 to 11 and also 12 to 17. And this caused a lot of alarm among parents, but people need to remember that the bottom line recommendation is that protection against severe illness and hospitalization is still very high. So the recommendation still stands in place that parents should go get their kids vaccinated. And again, none of these studies have showed increased safety concerns with these vaccines at all, which is important to highlight.
Okay. Before we move on, because I know you got a round of 2 truths and a lie, real quickly, I just want to ask you, right, because I was having this conversation now that the mask is becoming optional in schools. I asked my high schooler if he plans to unmask when it's allowed, and he said he wants to see what his friends do. So I think for kids, peer influence is a big factor here. But how do you weigh that? I mean, how do you think students and their parents might want to discuss and approach this and decide this, whether I should unmask?
I think what you just ended there, right, is a perfect first step, is for parents to actually have that discussion, for kids to actually have the discussion about their own risk factors, their level of comfort, and understanding that with many other things in life, Christian, there is no such thing as zero risk. And there is some risk out there that you're going to come in contact with SARS-CoV-2. So what is the risk of you catching it for you individually? And I think aside from that, it's important that we remember that there's still a recommendation to mask if you're a high risk, or even if you feel like you want that level of protection. And we can't enter into a place where we're stigmatizing those who choose to do that. And so those conversations have to be had, and people need to remember that if you feel like you want the protection, continue to wear a mask, and others need to respect that even after these mandates get lifted.
Were you thinking of this week when Florida Governor Ron DeSantis at a high school was telling those students behind him to take off their masks? And I was just wondering, look, no longer mandated doesn't mean take them off the second and you should not choose to wear them, right? Is that a worry?
It does. And that, this kind of speaks to the fact that I worry about some stigmatizing. I worry about politics getting in play. But remember, if you feel comfortable wearing a mask, that is your right. And if you watch that video, there is one student in the back who just glares at Governor DeSantis and keeps his mask on. And I was like, right on.
Oh, yeah, that kid. I think they eventually moved him from out of the camera shot. But OK, so 2 truths and a lie. We don't have a lot of time. Let's go.
Fire at will. Everyone knows how we play this game. Tell us which one of these is not true. Is it A, the National COVID-19 Preparedness Plan focuses on vaccine equity, variant detection, reopening, and treatment, those 4? Or is it B, the test to treat plan should include reviewing a patient's medications to avoid adverse interactions? Or is it C, both New York State and the CDC presented the same data showing a decline in vaccine protection for 5 to 11-year-olds? Which one of these is not true?
All right, folks, I'm only going to give you 10 seconds on Facebook Live to submit your answers and consider them. Thank you. Because we don't have a lot of time. I know B is true, or at least I think it is. And I think C is true as well. So I think you got a little tricky here. And I think A is the lie, because I think one of those, I'm not sure which one. I think variant detection is not in there. But let's go ahead and, oh, you know what? I have just been affirmed by at least a couple of our regulars. So A is the lie.
So A is actually true. If you actually go right now to whitehouse.com, look at the COVID plan.
Daniel, Robert, you guys failed me. No, I'm just kidding. I thank you very much for participating, but let's listen to Dr. Patel's explanation.
I will say, if you go online and you look at the White House's plan, those are the 4 tenets, which are kind of outlining this 96-page proposal. And it's actually well organized. I encourage anyone to go and look at that, especially the part about preparing for new variants. B is in fact true. Even though the Test to Treat is an incredible program to get people access to those potentially life-saving medications, people should understand that Paxlovid can't interact with other medications, such as some that are used to treat heart disease or high cholesterol. Molnupiravir is not recommended for pregnant women or people under the age of 18. So those are some of the interactions to look out for. The reason why C is tricky and not true is the New York State study only looked at New York State data. It was preprint. The CDC put out a study looking at 10 states, and it was actually a little different. And the CDC just kind of further emphasized the point that we have to look at these vaccines' efficacies in children over a broader time period, a broader area, and to remind people that they still work against severe illness and hospitalizations. The whole point of C was to tell people that headlines can be tricky.
Indeed, indeed. I want to compliment Betty Jo here. A shout out to her for getting C correctly. Dr. Patel, thank you so much. Don't go away. One more question on Facebook Live. And when we come back, we'll talk to Michael Finney, who's going to talk to an expert to get your tax questions answered. We'll be right back.
Go Betty Jo.
All right. Can I squeeze in one question on Facebook Live with Dr. Patel or no? Or do we have to get Michael ready?
Dr. Patel's game.
I mean, can we talk to Patel, though, or no? Oh, yeah, real quickly, super quickly. What are some potential hiccups with the test to treat plan that President Biden unveiled? If not problems, like potential questions that still need to be answered.
Sure. I think the biggest one is the supply of the actual pills. Are there going to be enough supply for everyone out there who might be high risk, who's testing positive, and that would like to go and get Paxlovid or Molnupiravir? Another potential roadblock we're going to run into if someone says, I want Paxlovid because it's 90% protective, I don't want Molnupiravir, which is 30%. Are they going to be able to choose, go to a different pharmacy? How is that going to work out? This is also only recommended for people who are 12 years and older for Paxlovid, 18 years and older for Molnupiravir who are high risk. So bottom line is supply and making sure that there is a health professional, whether that is a physician, an NP, a pharmacist who can verify those medications to avoid interactions and verify that the right person is getting the right med.
All right, Dr. Patel, I'll end it with this. Fan Win says, Dr. Patel and Kristen, dream team at work again. Woohoo, dream team.
Dream team in person, hopefully soon.
All right, hopefully soon. Fan, thank you very much. Dr. Patel, thank you very much. We'll see you next time. Have a good weekend.
Thank you. You too.
All right, everybody. Thanks for your participation and help today. A sound is solid. All right, we'll be back shortly. How much time do we have? Checking. 30 seconds? Oh, okay. Let me look at some other comments. Right? Tax time is once again just around the corner on Monday, April 18th this year. That's not a lot of time. Luckily, 7 on Your Side's Michael Finney is here partnering with the United Way to help answer your tax questions. All right. Hi, Michael.
Hey, Kristen, we haven't done this for a year. We skipped last year because of the pandemic, and we're back. We do this every single year. Tax Chat on 7 on Your Side. Now, we are doing things a little different this year. Here's the deal. You cannot call in this year. You have to go to social media, #AskFinney. You can go to abc7news.com, or you can go to the ABC7 Facebook page and ask your question there. We have experts from CPAs, Cal CPA, Golden Gate CPAs, and United Way Bay Area. And that brings me to this guy right here. He's an expert. He's a volunteer with United Way Bay Area. His name is KK Saraguchi. And I almost walked over next to you. I'm not used to doing interviews from far away. What I wanted to talk to you about is a child tax credit, because it's different this year than last year, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so what is the tax credit? Let's start with the most basic.
The most basic, the child tax credit is really a credit for if you have children. If you have children that you're claiming on your tax return. And by definition, a child is anyone who's under 17 years of age for the child tax credit. So you get a credit. If you have a child who's under 6 years of age, you get an extra credit for them. So that's really what the credit is.
So it's pretty complicated. Last year, you didn't have to do anything, right? Check came in the mail, and that was the end of it?
Well, last year, you just had children on your return, and you claimed the credit. You got the credit when you filed your tax return. This year, you got advance credit payments for 6 months. So if you had a child who was under 17 but over 6 years old, then you're entitled to a credit of $3,000 for the whole year. But you received $300 for 6 months, that's right. So $250 for 6 months. So $1,500 you received as advance credit payments throughout the year. When you file the tax return, you can claim the other $1,500.
Okay. So you have to file taxes to get the second
to get the balance of the payment. You only got the advance, and the advance is half.
All right, we're trying to get Michael's microphone back. Yeah, sorry about that. We're working on Michael's microphone. And while we're working on that, I should just let you know that Michael and the United Way will be there answering your questions until 7 o'clock tonight. You can submit questions on social media using the hashtag AskFinny or go to abc7news.com/7 on your side. We'll try to reconnect with Michael and be right back. All right, guys, we're working on some things. Sorry about the technical issue. We'll be right back. Yo, I know. I'm just talking to my Facebook viewers. I mean, like, what should I be doing right now? Because... All right, we've reconnected with Michael and want to get back to him in United Way to answer your tax questions. Michael.
Bay Area is answering tax questions tonight up until 7 o'clock right here on Channel 7. You get a hold of them along with the Cal CPAs and Golden Gate CPAs by going online to abc7news.com, or you can go to our Facebook page. Just look for ABC 7 News Facebook page. With the United Way Bay Area is KK here, and KK is going to answer some questions right now. And we want to talk to him about the child tax credit because it gets complicated. We're going to start from the very beginning again, which is this was part of the relief that came through Congress and President Biden, correct?
Yes, it's part of the America Rescue Plan Act. So that's when the advanced child tax credit payments were instituted. And in previous years, you only get the child tax credit when you file your tax return at the end of the year. But this year, you get advanced child tax credit payments, which are typically half the amount that you'd get for the whole year. And then you get the other half when you file a tax return.
Okay, so you should have received, if you are eligible for this, you should have received about half the money right now. And to get the other half, you got to file your taxes. And that's where it gets complicated. They send you a letter with information. Do I have that right?
They send you a letter, but in some cases, everyone may not receive a letter. You can also go online in your IRS account and look it up. But the important thing to keep in mind is that if you're a married couple, the credit that's shown is shown per spouse, and it's only half the credit that's actually given to you. So you got to keep that in mind. And because you can't make mistakes on when you report in the tax return, if you have any mistakes, that could cause complications.
All right, KK, thank you very much. Sorry for all the confusion here. We're going to be here till 7 o'clock answering your questions. You can go online to the Facebook page of ABC7, or you can go to abc7news.com. I'm Michael Finney. We'll be here. We'll check back in later today.
All right, Michael, thanks a lot. I know you have more at 4. Bye-bye.
See ya.